All right, ladies and gentlemen. So Joe Biden is facing impeachment for, drumroll please, the exact same thing that the Democrats tried to impeach Donald Trump over in 2019. So I have a question for you guys. What are your guesses that the left will engage in the same fervor to try to push Biden's impeachment through as they did with Donald Trump? Leave the answer down below. I personally am going to say that the odds are about as close to true zero as you can get. But in 2019, the Democrats introduced articles of impeachment against Donald Trump, and a lot of you probably remember this, but they used this justification that Donald Trump engaged in a quid pro quo with Ukraine and froze congressionally approved financial aid for leverage. And today, fast forward a few years, we have a similar story, but a completely different president. Yes, a Democrat president. See, Joe Biden, he is seen tanking numbers big time. His numbers are falling so fast. And because of this, he has to appeal to a far more radical left faction to bolster his number. But the problem with this group of people is that they are also extremely anti-Israel. And for weeks, we have seen the mass protests around the country and on different college campuses. They're everywhere. We've seen it all over the news. So in order to maintain some of the support from this faction that he desperately needs right now, because remember, we are in an election year. This is a very, very important election. It's against Donald Trump, the orange man, the bad guy. So he decided to do something drastic. He froze congressionally approved weapons shipments to Israel. And if that sounds familiar to you, it should. That's what we call a quid pro quo.
Fox News alert. Joe Biden's currently withholding military aid to our ally Israel in the middle of a war against Hamas because of political pressure from radical students. Right now, Israel's on the cusp of going into Rafah in southern Gaza, the final battle of the war. Hamas is entrenched among the Palestinian civilian population, has nowhere else to go, and still refuses to return hostages or agree to a ceasefire. And just moments ago on CNN, Joe Biden threw the protesters a bone, declaring that Israel would never receive these American weapons if aid went into Rafah.
I made it clear that if they go into Rafah, they haven't gone into Rafah yet. If they go into Rafah, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with Rafah, to deal with the cities, to deal with that problem. It's just wrong. We're not going to supply the weapons and the artillery shells used that have been used.
Artillery shells as well.
Yeah, artillery shells.
The weapons Biden's withholding have already been approved by Congress and are precision munitions, exactly what Israel needs to launch smart strikes against Hamas targets with as little collateral damage as possible. This is exactly the opposite of what Biden declared Israel's mission should be, remember?
Do you believe that Hamas must be eliminated entirely?
Yes, I do.
It's now clear that President Joe Biden's withholding military aid from an ally to help win an election. The exact same thing Democrats accused Trump of doing and impeached him for.
So they say history repeats itself, and there was at least one member of Congress, Representative Cory Mills, who noticed this. And he was like, this sounds very vaguely similar to what happened with Donald Trump. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to introduce articles of impeachment against Joe Biden because, they did it to Donald Trump. So why can't we do it to Joe Biden? I mean, the Democrats, they should be on board with this. They should be all over this because, you can't have a quid pro quo, right? That is the worst thing that you can do. It was so bad back in 2019 that they impeached Donald Trump over it.
Cory Mills has formally filed articles of impeachment against President Joe Biden over his threat to withhold arms to Israel. The legislation consists of a single article citing abuse of presidential power. It reads in part, in violation of his oath to faithfully execute the office of president and to uphold the Constitution, President Biden abused the powers of his office by soliciting a quid pro quo with Israel while leveraging vital military aid for policy changes. This egregious action not only compromised the credibility of the United States, but also undermined the interests of our longstanding ally, Israel.
So it looks like Joe Biden is in a little bit of trouble here. And this is the resolution that was introduced by Representative Cory Mills. It says, impeaching Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., President of the United States, for high crimes and misdemeanors. Resolve that Joseph Biden, President of the United States, is impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors, and that the following articles of impeachment be exhibited to the United States Senate. And this is the problem here. The Senate is controlled by Democrats. I don't think this is going to go anywhere whatsoever because you had Mayorkas who got impeached and he was charged with 2 felonies by the House of Representatives. It went to the Senate and what happened? They voted not to even have a trial. So this might just be simply a symbolic thing to say, hey, listen, you guys did it to Trump. So be careful, or we can do it to you. I mean, we're going to hold you to your same standard. And even though I don't think this is going to go anywhere at all, I think this is a good gesture because a lot of these Democrats are getting out of control and they're abusing their power. And they got to realize that, listen, power doesn't always stay in the same hands forever. So if you want to, be good in the future, you better watch what you do, because when the power comes back in our hands, you're expanding precedents quite a bit to allow us to have a lot of power and to come back against you. But let's continue this. Articles of impeachment exhibited by the House of Representatives of the United States of America in the name of itself and of the people of the United States of America against Joseph Biden, President of the United States of America, in maintenance and support of its impeachment against him for high crimes and misdemeanors. Article 1, abuse of power. The Constitution provides that the House of Representatives shall have the sole power of impeachment and that the president shall be removed from the office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. So exactly what they impeached Donald Trump over. This alleged crime of him doing this quid pro quo in Ukraine by freezing these funds. Then it continues, in his conduct of the office of President of the United States and in violation of his constitutional oath, faithfully to execute the office of the President of the United States and to the best of his ability, blah, 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 blah. That's the rest of what it says in the Constitution. Then it continues, using the powers of his high office, President Biden solicited a quid pro quo with the foreign government of Israel by withholding precision-guided weapon shipments in order to try and extract military policy changes. So yeah, how is this different at all from what Donald Trump did? And the Democrats went after Donald Trump like a rabid dog. We all saw it. They made stuff up. They literally made stuff up, and they had the entire force of the mainstream media behind them pushing this narrative that Donald Trump was some sort of Russian agent or something like that. And he was working with Russia to interfere with this election, and he had this quid pro quo with Ukraine. But continuing on, President Biden sought to pressure the government of Israel to take steps by conditioning the official United States government acts of significant value to Israel. After initial reports surfaced, President Biden confirmed them and openly stated, quote, I made it clear that if they go into Rafah, they haven't gone into Rafah yet. If they go into Rafah, though, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with Rafah, to deal with the cities that deal with that problem. In doing so, President Biden used the powers of the presidency in a matter that compromised the national security of the United States and its ally Israel. He thus ignored and injured the interests of the nation. So I believe that was actually pretty well said, even though I don't believe really that we should be sending a lot of money to these other countries. I believe that we are doing it right now at the expense of the United States. And I think it's very, very important that we take care of our country first. But using it like this, using this legislation to try to shove it back into the Democrats' face, because I believe that the Democrats abuse their power way too much, I think this is appropriate. But here is Representative Mills on Fox News talking about this. And apparently Mike Pence is not a big fan of what he is doing. Listen.
So Mike Pence disagrees with you on this. He says this is totally unacceptable. I'm old enough to remember when Democrats impeached another president for supposedly withholding foreign aid that had been approved by Congress. Stop the threats, Joe. America stands with Israel. Your thoughts on that?
Well, when I start concerning myself with what Mike Pence has to say, I'll stop running for Congress.
So it looks like Joe Biden is in a lot of trouble, and it couldn't have come at a better time because it is an election year. He is running against Donald Trump, and he is using the power of the Department of Justice, the DOJ, to go after Trump right now in all these unjust trials against him, especially this hush money trial, which is an absolute joke. But, his falling numbers, I see this, and I see Joe Biden and his administration scrambling to get his numbers up. And they have to resort to things like this, which literally shows you that they are complete hypocrites. Because just a few years prior, they were going after Donald Trump for this. But it shows you that their ideology, what they do, it's just not sustainable. It's just not. They have to appeal to this far left faction, and they are literally eating themselves from the inside right now. And I love to see it. I love to see it. It's the perfect time for this to happen. But what do you guys think? What do you guys think about Joe Biden possibly being impeached? Do you think it'll go through? What do you think is going to happen eventually or ultimately? I don't have a lot of high hopes for Joe Biden actually being impeached all the way through, but I guess we shall see. Stranger things have happened. But let me know what you think down below in the comments. Like and subscribe to my channel. I'd really appreciate it. But until then, I will see you on the next one.